Hello friends, Kitty here. And, well, it's Friday once again, so for the second week in a row, let's do another edition of Rebel News. This is Rebel News for January 19th, 2024.
Why are you good?
And so our first story here is a bit of personal news. So this week or a couple days ago, I posted a poll on my YouTube channel asking folks what I should get as my next upgrade for my P365 XL handgun, and folks voted the Streamlight TLR 7 sub. So I went and I found the SIG version today, and we're gonna slap that on there. I'm excited to do it after this, but I figured might as well take care of business first. And so for our first story in world news, though, is many might have heard the big story of the week was Iran's attacks in Erbil in Iraq this past Wednesday. And although that was a big story, there are some details that weren't as reported I think some folks might find interesting. So despite claims from the foreign minister of Iran that the Revolutionary Guard struck bases of Israeli intelligence in Erbil, officials there are denying the claim that the Israelis were even present at all. So Ruda, a news agency, reports that both Iraqi and Kurdish officials have reported no such presence, no Mossad exists in the area. And to be honest, historically they haven't really been known to be friendly. So it seems kind of odd that Iran would go to this. Like, it's kind of a wild claim to make without much evidence. And Fuad Hussein, the foreign minister of Iraq, kind of chipped back at this, saying that the acts were aggression, and specifically they were, quote, the leaders of security organizations inside Iran, they feel like they cannot manage or control their security. Therefore, they are trying to export the problem to outside the country. Iraq and Kurdistan also canceled meetings with Iran at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week, which seems to suggest that maybe relations there are kind of getting spicy. Iran's making it to the list twice today for a similar sort of incident. And looks like Iran struck areas of Pakistan on Wednesday, similar kind of time frame, prompting a response from Pakistan 24 hours later. Interestingly, Al Jazeera reported that Pakistan said the attack was based on credible intelligence of impending large-scale terrorist activities from across the border. So while details on that aren't exactly clear, Pakistan does claim that it shared the intelligence with Iran before striking the terrorist targets. Also, ironically, Pakistani rhetoric following the incident seems to suggest that they don't wish to escalate the conflict. So it's kind of like a complex situation going on there, and while it does on the surface seem to be getting worse, it doesn't really seem to fit in either country's interest, given all the tensions there, to fight with each other. So it looks like perhaps it was sort of just like an innocent mistake, or Pakistan just struck rogue militants in Iran without really consulting Iran or getting their authorization first. This is a very complex story, but I don't think that things will get worse with Pakistan anytime soon, but it's sort of interesting to see Iran appear and striking multiple other countries on the same day. So the big news story a week ago was the bunch of gangs in Ecuador had seized a TV studio live while it was airing. Ecuador in general has had a sharp spike in gang activity. Basically what started as a prison uprising has sort of evolved into an open war between law enforcement and gangs of criminals. And the the criminals have been incredibly brazen and public in their acts so far. Sort of reminiscent of terrorist organizations, to be honest, but it is being described as a narco war. And in the most sort of recent display of crazy public acts, the lead prosecutor for that same incident that was charging criminals for the TV studio seizure was shot in broad daylight. And it was quite dramatic. Ecuador is basically like full Gotham City at this point. Just all kinds of crazy gang activity and prisoners now using prisons like as bases. So it's pretty remarkable to see how that's kind of turned around. So keep an eye out on Ecuador, as that situation is not quite under control yet. So our next one, Russia's kind of always had a strong arm approach to protests, especially during this Ukraine war period. And however, on Wednesday as well, the protests erupted in Russia for a Fail Alsinov, an activist that had been jailed for comments that he made protesting a gold mine trying to open back in April. So Alsinov was recently sentenced to 4 years in a penal colony, which sparked a bunch of outrage among supporters and the public. As many as 3,000 protesters were active at the demonstration, and it was eventually pretty violently broken up by police. Still, this marks one of the kind of like the biggest demonstrations since the war began. Very rare that we see those happen, but it still happens even in Russia. So on Thursday, 9 Syrians, including 2 children, were killed in an attack in southern Syria. Despite not officially claiming responsibility for the attack, Jordan has actually been suspected by numerous analysts. Jordan has carried out similar attacks earlier this month and also back in December. Jordan has recently been carrying out anti-narcotic operations in the region as the drug Captagon has become endemic. Jordan's foreign minister met with Bashar al-Assad of Syria recently in the past, attempting cooperation on this narcotics issue. It is unclear if the Assad regime is implicitly or overtly supporting these recent attacks. So last week we covered a story about Turkish attacks taking out power and water for possibly millions of people in northeast Syria. And since then, the attacks have continued pretty much daily, multiple times a day, and the situation has become even more dire. On Thursday, citizens in Manbij and in the Euphrates regions in northern Syria came out to demonstrate solidarity and resistance to what they say are attempts at intimidation by Turkey, as well as attempts to revive ISIS and sort of sow chaos in the area. The demonstrators expressed anger towards Turkish attacks in the region and the subsequent rise of ISIS as it sort of capitalizes on all the chaos and discord they've sown. Othman Abdo, a demonstrator, reported to Hawar News that, quote, "The occupying state is trying to create a state of chaos in our regions, but it does not know that the people are organized according to the thought and philosophy of leader Abdullah Öcalan, and will not leave their land and will resist until their last breath." So Abdo's gonna come for you. For this last story, I thought I'd break up all the kind of serious stories with something just like so weird and American that it's like hard to believe it's true. Like, while all this other stuff is happening in the world, like this is the kind of things that our politicians are worried about and are focused on. So in Oklahoma on Wednesday, a bill was presented to the House of Representatives, House Bill 3084, In it was outlined a particularly strange practice of how to deal with an unruly student exhibiting anthropomorphic behavior, otherwise known as furries. The text of the law literally used the term furries and suggests that school staff employ animal control to remove them. It goes so far as to ban them entirely from schools, in a pretty legendary line of American statesmanship. Students who purport to be an imaginary animal or animal species, or who engage in anthropomorphic behavior, commonly referred to as furries at school, shall not be allowed to participate in school curriculum or activities. I don't even know. It's just like that's so fucked up to do. I wouldn't describe myself as part of the community, but I know enough of them. I think it's just a weird thing to fixate on. I also like make meow sounds occasionally to be cute. I guess that would make me. Well, thanks again for joining, friends. I hope you had a fun time and learned at least a little. Many of these stories presented have kind of like a bleak tone to them, but it's important that even in all this chaos, to try and find some levity here and there. Try to take it lightly as you can. As always, love you, fam. Bye.